just in, you are looking at obviously a very disturbing live shot there. That is the World Trade Center, and we have unconfirmed reports this morning that a plane has crashed into one of the towers of the World Trade Center.
We understand that a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center.
Obviously a major fire there, and there has been some sort of explosion. We don't fully know the details. There is one report, as of yet unconfirmed, that a plane has hit the World Trade Center.
There's another one. Another plane just hit. Right? Oh my gosh, another plane has just hit.
Today we've had a national tragedy. Two airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country.
There has been a nuclear accident in the Soviet Union, and the Soviets have admitted that it happened. The Soviet version is this. One of the atomic reactors at the Chernobyl atomic power plant near the city of Kiev was damaged, and there is speculation in Moscow that people were injured and may have died.
You are watching, this is video that just came into us, so this is unedited video. You can see people coming across the finish line there, and there is the explosion 1 and 2. But again, the explosion, the main one there at the Marathon Sports.
Telling you this morning there has been a shooting at a school in Newtown. This is the Sandy Hook Elementary School.
And liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
Roger, Challenger. Good roll program confirmed. Challenger now heading down range.
What appears to be a major catastrophe in America's space program. Challenger, only seconds after leaving the launch pad, has exploded in midair. No word yet on if there are any survivors.
Broadcasting live from the dark and cold dungeons deep beneath the KLAV studios in Las Vegas, Nevada. Prepare yourselves to be taken away into another dimension as we now have control over your thoughts, fears, and perspective of the unexplained world you dare not speak of. With your hosts, Lindsay Knight and Michael Knight. Ladies and gentlemen, we now open the gates to the paranormal and beyond.
Broadcasting live from the KLAV studios in Las Vegas, Nevada, this is the Paranormal and Beyond. Since the beginning of time, the world has been plagued with disasters, whether it's cataclysmic, natural, or man-made. As these tragedies present themselves before our own very eyes, we can only sit back and watch these horrors unfold, secretly wishing that if we knew these disastrous events in advance, we could all possibly prevent them from ever taking place. But just what if we were all able to take a sneak peek into the future? Can we really alter the course of our own destinies, disregarding the warning signs altogether? In a moment, a man who is known around the world as the most documented psychic and who also predicted events such as the 9/11 attacks, the modern-day Nostradamus himself, Anthony Carr, will be joining us on the program to discuss his remarkable abilities as well as share his juicy 2014 list of world predictions to come. So prepare as we look deep into the future with Anthony Carr when we return right here on the Talk of Las Vegas, KLAV 1230 AM.
Your ticket to the unknown is at KnightsParanormalResearchSociety.com. UFOs, ghosts, aliens, hauntings, mysterious places, and more can be found at KnightsParanormalResearchSociety.com. Knights with a K, ParanormalResearchSociety.com. Based out of Las Vegas, Nevada, Knights Paranormal Research Society is owned and operated by the renowned brother and sister team of Michael and Lindsay Knight. Seeing is believing. And at KnightsParanormalResearchSociety.com, you're going to believe. Join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight, for the Paranormal and Beyond. Join host Michael Knight and Lindsay Knight as they investigate the unexplained and most controversial mysteries of the world. The Paranormal and Beyond, where the paranormal lives on and conspiracies exposed. The Paranormal and Beyond, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight. Brought to you by Knight's Paranormal Research Society.com.
Just because you've seen it in the news doesn't mean it's real.
So you're telling me you got physically attacked by a ghost?
Like, I can tell you right now, I believe in the paranormal more than I believe in our government.
There are so many mysteries out there that are still yet to be explained.
You folks have some of your facts wrong, and you just keep talking about generalities.
With all due respect, sir, you have not brought anything to the table to prove us wrong.
This is the Paranormal and Beyond, and it's your show. Call us at 731-1230. Here again, Michael Knight and Lindsay Knight.
Welcome back to another brand new edition of the Paranormal and Beyond. But first, be sure to check us out at Knight's Paranormal Research Society.com, where you can link up to all the past shows by simply clicking on that archive link above. That's Knight's Paranormal Research Society.com. Ever want to be an actor? Well, you can. You can start by logging on right now to HollywoodBoundActingAcademy.com. Once again, that's HollywoodBoundActingAcademy.com. Special shout out to all those listening worldwide through the KLAV1230am.com website, and all those driving around in the Vegas Valley listening to us on your stereos. I'm your host, Michael Knight. Joining me alongside is your hostess, Lindsay Knight, and we are your radio vigilantes, giving you the best in paranormal radio, one broadcast at a time. How you doing, Lindsay?
Hello there, Mike.
I am great. Are you asking me if I'm great? I'm jumping ahead.
Oh, yeah,
already.
that's the coffee.
All right, we got the world's most documented psychic on standby, and it's going to blow us away with 2014 predictions. And if you thought 2013 was bad, I don't even know what to think of next year with this president, but I'm not going to go in there because it's just going to get dirty. And you know what they say, when you start digging, you only get dirty. All right, Anthony Carr is standing by, but first, let's get into today's news.
Topping the news for the Paranormal and Beyond this Friday, November 22nd, bringing you up-to-the-minute news on all the strange and bizarre happenings around the globe. In a sad and tragic story, a young girl was found caged and attempting to eat herself in a mobile home in Virginia, and cops say her parents are responsible. The malnourished girl, believed to be either 5 or 6, was discovered in a crib that was converted into a makeshift cage after police arrived at the home in Gloucester County to investigate a burglary last week. The girl was found living in the cage all summer with matted hair and was attempting to eat her flakes of dead skin. However, the girl's parents, Brian and Shannon Gore, were arrested and charged with felony child abuse. The mother was also charged with attempted capital murder. However, the gruesome twosome now faces first-degree murder charges after the remains of what authorities believe to be another child were found buried outside the mobile home. A month-old baby was also found in the home but was in good condition. Both he and the other girl are now in the care of the County Department of Social Services. Reporting the news for the Paranormal and Beyond, this is Lindsay Knight.
All right, they need to throw the book at these people or just stand in the middle of the street and let me run you over
that is so terrible.
million times, because you can't afford a babysitter, but let's make a cage and put our kid there for the whole summer while we're out having summer vacation.
And the sad news is that this girl is like eating dead flakes from her body.
You know, there's people out there who eat scabs, but I mean, if you're doing it because you're hungry, you got a problem. All right, that's just sad. God bless that little girl. All right, let's get into our main topic, because our special guest, Anthony Carr, is world-renowned for his psychic abilities. He has been dubbed the modern-day Nostradamus, where he predicted events such as the 9/11 attacks, Operation Desert Storm, the murder of Pope John Paul I, the killer tsunami, the discovery of the Titanic, and the election of a German pope. Because of his spot-on accuracy, Anthony is also the world's most documented psychic, proving his abilities over and over again. Anthony Carr is also the author of 2 internationally syndicated columns, Stargazing and Hands of Destiny, with 3 books, Palmistry, Hands of Destiny, Shiro, Prophet of the End Times, and Fool's Journey, and Autobiography. His predictions are also published regularly in the National Enquirer and the Globe. Throughout his life, Anthony has demonstrated his psychic abilities to the amazement of all, including many politicians, royalty, Hollywood stars, with people saying that Anthony is in a class all by himself. He has personally done readings for Sylvester Stallone, Frank Sinatra, Glenda Jackson, Ella Fitzgerald, Lillian Gish, Richard Burton, Liberace, Cab Calloway, Peggy Lee, Mikhail Gorbachev, Queen Juliana of the Netherlands, Lady Iris Mountbatten, Countess de Salaga, which is the descendant of Vlad the Impaler, and many others. He's appeared on numerous national TV shows and radio programs all around the world. Carr is also an expert on the legendary escape artist Harry Houdini, where in the past Anthony's father taught Houdini how to dive deep in water, a skill that the master magician would later use over and over again for his underwater escapes. Besides being a psychic, Carr is a world-class saxophonist and has performed with such leading musicians as B.E. King of Stand By Me fame and Ronnie Hawkins. The Paranormal and Beyond would like to welcome to the program Anthony Carr. How you doing, Anthony?
Well, thank you very much, Michael, for that wonderful bill. I hope I can live up to it. Or down to it.
Yeah,
you know, you were talking about throwing the book at those 2 perverts. If you're going to throw a book at them, throw my new book of predictions for the future.
Oh, yeah.
It's such bad news that maybe they'll kill themselves.
Not that your book is bad, but because
That's a good one.
we'll just throw it hard enough and knock him out or knock some sense into him.
You know, when I heard some of the introduction to your show there, I was tempted to go into... I was working in the lab late one night when my eyes beheld an eerie sight. When from my slab my monster began to rise, and suddenly, to my surprise, he did the mash. He did the monster mash.
Yeah, you can pick up Anthony's Carr CD and hit single at Amazon.com.
Anthony, well, it's good to be here, and you and your lovely sister.
Oh, yeah.
Anthony, I just have to say, you know, with all the stuff that Mike has introduced you in the intro, my goodness, you have done so much in, you know, I mean, a short time, my goodness.
Sure, well, I've been on this planet now almost 7 decades, and it's interesting that the show is on the very eve of the assassination of Kennedy, which I remember so very well. Plus, it coincides with my mother's birthday, who's 91 today.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, my first job, working fresh out of school, high school, the only thing I learned that stood me in good stead was that I learned how to type. So the first job I had on an old typewriter, an Underwood typewriter, was as a clerk typist for the United Appeal, which later evolved into one of the other charities, the subsidiaries, as the Variety Village, or Variety the Children's Charity, which I'm still heavily involved in, and I still work out in the gym there to this day, 33 years. But my job then was to go through all the 3 main newspapers in Toronto, the Toronto Daily Star, the Telegram, and the Globe and Mail, and I had to read through all the obituary columns, and I had to cut out the obituaries of each of the people who had passed away, who had pledged to leave money to the United Appeal. So, and behind me, and this is before computers, were files and files of these pledge cards, and I had to take out the pledge card, and I had to compare it to the obituary column. And let's say, for instance, if there were 2 Mr. Jones, A. Jones, who had passed away, and I wasn't sure which one, I had to call the funeral parlor and see if I could verify which Mr. Jones that was. And if I couldn't do it that way, the company would give me streetcar fare or bus fare, and I have to trot all the way down to the funeral parlor, and I'd have to look literally in the casket and ask the relatives if that was the right Mr. Jones.
Is this him?
And I'll tell you, 2 years of that, and all my friends wondered why I was always so depressed. But, you know, very interesting point and almost very prophetic, and you think about these things, was the last obituary clipping, you know, the little columns, the way they run in the newspapers, I clipped out one, and I pulled the pledge card, and this was 5 minutes before the assassination, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, JFK. And what do you think the last name was that I pulled out of the obituary?
It was not Kennedy.
It was Kennedy. So help me, I swear on a stack of Bibles. I mean, Kennedy is a pretty popular name, but still, all in all. So, and then the president I had just come back in from lunch that day, my mother's birthday, and I'd taken my first saxophone lesson, and I had to rent an old clunky saxophone, and I lugged it back into the office on my lunch, because lunch was 12 to 1, and I put it beside, and I just started to type, and the president of United Community Fund come running around the desk, and he was a big man. He was American from Texas, actually. 350 pounds, Mr. Yeager. I'll never forget that. And he ran around the front of my desk. The whole floor was shaking. He said, "The president's being shot. I remember looking at him thinking, has he lost his mind? He's right here running in front of my desk, you know.
Yeah.
I thought he was the president he was talking about. And then 2 days later, I was playing pool in a popular bar not too far from where we worked, and I saw the initial shooting of Oswald, and that's when I thought to myself, something's funny here. Is it too much of a setup? It just was too pat. And Jack Ruby, of course, allegedly died of natural causes in prison 3 years later. So no doubt in my mind there was some kind of conspiracy, and no doubt in my mind that Lyndon Johnson, I always psychically felt he had something to do with it, or he had knowledge of it, if nothing else.
Well,
one of the reporters who was standing right behind Oswald when he was shot is the very same founder of the now Toronto Sun that I write for, was Peter Worthington, the late. He's just passed away about a month ago. He was the young reporter standing there in shock right behind Ruby Oswald, when Ruby walked up and shot him in the stomach.
Well, you know, it's funny because, you know, 50 years later, there's still stories like you see in the magazines walking to the grocery stores. You know, it's still considered a conspiracy, Kennedy's murder. I mean, yeah, exactly. But, you know, I obviously don't think, doing a lot of research on the assassination, that Oswald worked alone. Obviously, obviously somebody else had to have been the
Anytime the government's
culprit.
Involved, there's many involved. I'll tell you that right now.
As Walter Cronkite said there at the end of the announcement that he announced, and he was in total shock. Usually he's so well composed. You know, it's terrible to think that such a tragic historical event could have been committed by one lone, scrawny, weak-chinned ex-Marine who was kicked out for whatever reason. He was given a, what do you call it, a...
Discharge?
Dishonorable discharge as well. And, you know, but, you know, I have to tell you, I don't know if anybody's ever thought about this, you know, and I kind of grew up peripherally around the mob here in Toronto. I had a godfather by the name of Roy Pasquale, who was pretty well connected with Stefano, my God, I'm getting old, but he was part of he was the Rochester godfather, who was probably the most violent and vicious of them all, and connected with the five families in New York. Stefano, anyway, can't have dead. It'll come to me. But anyway, he came to Toronto in the early 70s. Stefano Magadino. And he came to Toronto to offer my godfather, Roy Pasquale, and you can read all about him up on my website there, and in a book by a Toronto writer by the name of Adrian Humphreys called Weasel. He was a chauffeur for Jimmy Hoffa and all that, and also he was the step-brother of my godfather, Roy Pasquale. Anyway, first, he told me for years and years, he says, you don't make a deal with the mob. And old Joe Kennedy, he was the one who, we all know where he came from. He's a bootlegger and a racketeer. Trouble is, you should never forget your roots, where you come from. And he made the mistake of thinking he could buy respectability, and he became an ambassador for the United States government. And then he did not tell his kids, JFK, who was probably worldwide anyway. He was a war veteran and a hero. But Bobby Kennedy grew up with a silver spoon in his mouth. And then when Sam Giancana, Joe Kennedy went to Sam Giancana, the Chicago godfather, and helped him swing the Illinois vote so that Jack Kennedy would win. Because Jack Kennedy only won by a hair. You know that. That to become the 35th president, 34th. Mm-hmm. Anyway, then the deal was they were supposed to leave the mob guys alone and let them do what they do. But instead of that, he didn't bother to tell the boys, you make a deal, you keep your word, no matter what business it is.
Right.
And Bobby Kennedy went after Hoffa. He went after the Tropicana, who was the New Orleans Godfather. Had the FBI pick him up in a silk suit and deposit him somewhere in a country road about 1,000 miles away. And you can't do that and make a deal and expect nothing to happen. So the story is, of course, you couldn't kill Bobby Kennedy and get away with it because his brother would go after him. So in order to kill the whole snake, you have to cut off the head, and that's one of the theories. And I kind of lean toward that too.
Well, you brought up Hoffa, and that's a good point. Obviously, there's also stories that the mafia had something to do with Jimmy Hoffa's murder, and Richard Kuklinski, the Iceman, came out right before he died that he was actually a part of that.
That's right. The Iceman gives a whole new meaning to the Iceman cometh.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, I guess we're off topic here. But
that's okay. Let's get back on.
Well,
let's talk.
Anthony,
you have so much to tell us.
I got to ask you. Okay, you're profound with these predictions. You're well documented. There's not a lot of psychics out there who would put themselves out like that because they're scared of being wrong.
Well, I have my detractors. One being the members of the CSIS, which is the Committee for the Investigation and Claims of the Paranormal.
Are you talking about James Randi?
James Randi.
It's so funny you said that. We were just talking about that with Yuri Geller, and every time I have a metaphysical guy on the show or a woman, here comes this guy.
I never met a physician I didn't like. Remember that.
So how did you acquire your abilities? Were you born with it, or a traumatic event happened?
Well, a little bit on my background, I guess, is I came from a poor but poverty-stricken family, and we lived in what is known here in Toronto as Old Cabbagetown or Regent Park, which you guys would call the projects, I guess, in the United States. And but we were carny people, circus people, carnivals. But in those days, the carnivals were huge. They were traveling conglomerates. Circuses would quite often join up with us to be part of the what was known here as the Conklin shows. Paddy Conklin was a displaced New Yorker who came to Canada and to the land of milk and honey, and got himself adopted as an adult by the owner of Conklin Shows, and he became the big head honcho for Conklin Shows. And Conklin Shows were the what they call here the CNE, the Canadian National Exhibition, held here in August, in the last 2 weeks or last week in September. It's the midway and all the rides, and Conklin Show puts down roots there for that entire month. But they've traveled, or they used to travel all across Canada and the States, and I think even during World War II there. So my father was a world champion high diver, and so was my mother, and an aquatic diver and swimmer. So he would daily, 2 or 3 times a day, climb up that 110-foot ladder with a spotlight crisscrossing him, a Klieg light, and of course he'd pretend to slip halfway and have to pull himself up and all that. And he would dive off this little platform from 110 feet into no more than 6.5, 7 feet of water.
Wow.
So, of course, he tried to make me into a diver, but I discovered early on that I get nosebleeds just standing on a thick rug. So he got me halfway up there when I was about 8 or 9, and I froze. And just he had to come up and literally peel each finger off. So when I got back down there, I'd wander around, and he'd leave me as a kid to tend to my own devices. But I was always fascinated by the little old gypsy lady who had what they call the mitt reading concession, and the mitt reading from the palmistry concession, the crystal ball and the cards and all that. And I would, I'd go over there and hang around their little candy striped tent, And she had that crinkly, curly hair, pointy nose, too much rouge on her cheeks. You know, she kind of and her nose went out and hooked down. She looked like a tired tired seagull. You know,
a tired seagull.
Anyway, the only thing that ruined the whole aspect of it when she talked, she had a Scottish drawl that sounded like you know, she had the kind of a brogue that should have only been worn on your foot. Anyway, she, you know, taught me a few of the tricks of the trade there, and when she first read my poem, she told me, and I barely understood what she was talking about, that I had the mystic cross in both hands, and that someday I would grow up to walk and roam with the kings and queens and Hollywood movie stars and so on. And she said, and she kept pressing her hand down on a table, or the palm of her hand. She kept saying, it's something to do with your hands. You're going to be working with your hands. There's something to do with your hands. And, of course, years later when I took up the saxophone, I thought, well, maybe that's what she meant. But, you know, years later when I started collecting the handprints of the famous, the great, the near great and the not so great, I come to realize that what she was seeing and couldn't quite put it together were the palm prints of all of these world figures that I came to collect for my palmistry book. And that's, again, going back, as you mentioned, the great silent screen icon, Lillian Gish and Richard Burton, all the way up to gangsters and mass murderers. And I even went to the Toronto morgue and the New York morgue and collect the handprints from the cadavers there just to see if there's a connection between the long lifeline or short lifeline and the length of life.
When you bring up palmistry, I mean, like, what's is it just the psyche? Like, what type of psychic are you? Because I know there's different types, like, of clairvoyance.
Just your everyday, common, variety house type.
I love it.
But well, you know, I've traveled the world doing open line radio and television shows where I do readings for people over the line, and I don't use any gadgetry, anything I use for a conduit. It's strictly. So, see, people should realize that we are electrical creatures,
right?
And as such, the phone or the television set or the television camera acts as an electrical conduit to the other person's psyche. Now, when I say your psyche, I'm talking about that spark of electricity that allows you to dredge up memories of your past, of your childhood, of loved ones who have gone on. You know, if you concentrate hard enough, you can. Even if you wear glasses, thick glasses, you don't need them to look introspectively. You can see your loved one in your mind's eye. You can roll them over. You can see them in 3 dimension. You can even hear their voice if you listen quietly. Everything is recorded right there in that little computer in your psyche, and indeed the whole neurological system. And, you know, that's pretty amazing, and yet we don't give it a second thought. In fact, we can give it a thought. It's amazing in itself. It's ipso facto. And we worry about our health and our heart and our weight, but the thing that allows us to worry about it is the mind, not the brain, but the mind. The mind is separate from the brain. The brain is the mechanics of the universal mind. So when I do a reading over the phone or television, people phone in, all I'm doing is just zooming along the electrical wires and locking into the electrical computer that is your mind, and all of those stored memories and things of your loved ones and sounds and images that you've had there. That's why a lot of the war victims, the veterans of Vietnam, World War II, they have these horrible nightmares and they can't get these images out of their mind because they're imprinted in there forever, for all times, you know. And certainly the eyes are the cameras, or the mirrors of the soul being an electrical current. So at death, I believe that the electrical part of us is what escapes the body, probably from the toes up through the brain, because the brain contains 1 billion electrical cells, each synapse going on at all times and transferring all these images and sounds back and forth. So when you hear someone say, you know, I saw my life flash before my mind, before my eyes. Well, literally you do, because the energy runs either to the largest body, which would be the brain cells, you see. It then probably retracts from the body, that electrical spark goes back into its original form. Let's say like a spark from a bonfire that you stir up and the sparks fly off. And in that little spark contains the immortal you, neither male, not female, but everything that is you, part of you, your connections with your parents, all of that. And to wander and roam in the massive universe, perhaps to return here on the cycle of life, if not necessarily here on this little speck, elsewhere. And I suppose it could take any other kind of form, not necessarily just human form, because energy can be converted into anything, animate or inanimate. So in that sense, we are all immortal that way. Now, if there is, as the Christians would prefer to believe, if you know, and nobody likes to believe they die and they're buried and that's all there is to it, the very DNA in your bones, right down to the subatomic cellular level, if I can get any lower than that, contains all of the information that is you, buried deeply in the DNA and resides deeply in the bones and in the cells. So, in theory, you could lie dead in your grave for 1,000 years, and if you were cloned, if God was a star traveler, as I believe, and if you read the book of Ezekiel, where those dead bones could rise again, remember the song?
Oh, yeah.
The hip bones connected to the hip bone, the hip bone, right? So it says each bone went by his bone, and each sinews and covered. Now that, you know, symbolically is supposed to represent the coming together of all the Israelites, the Jews, into one nation, Israel, far into the future. But I think he was describing some form of cloning, which, quite in theory, I believe it's possible to raise yourself from the dead, and you, as the Jews believe, they need to be buried whole. Well, you know, they can't have a missing limb, but you don't really need that. Because
is this the same thing like with the Egyptians?
I'm sorry?
Is this the same thing like with the Egyptians, how they resurrected, like how they feel like when they pass on and then they mummify them and then they can resurrect again?
Yes, they were more materialistic than we are, I think, and that's going some, because they think the body had to be whole, and you had to, you know, and put the heart and the lungs and the what is it when you got it when you got a chicken, what do they call when you cook them
the
separately?
gizzards?
The gizzards.
I don't like gizzards.
Right.
Mm-mm.
But see, you don't need all of that. And I told one of my Jewish friends who just passed away, George Kalmar, who owned the old Mill restaurant where I did my psychic show here. He was 90s. He escaped Auschwitz and he survived being machine gunned. He was quite a guy. He believes the same as I do, that, and, you know, he was missing a few toes and half a foot. And he says, I always felt like I had to scratch my foot, and there's no foot there, or no toe, because the electrical impulses of the whole neurological system, which is where this electrical energy circulates, is still there, if you want to call it the ghost of it. Your toes, you're missing. So if you can be cloned from, even if you lost all your limbs and your eyes or whatever, the DNA contains all of that, the whole, and I shall resurrect you into a whole new body and create for you a whole new heaven and earth. Well, why not? There's billions and billions of other Earth-like planets out there.
Anthony, I got to ask you this. When it comes to your
You don't have to, but go ahead.
When it comes to your world predictions, okay, that is a little bit more different than reading somebody. Now, how do you get these in visions, precognitive dreams?
Yeah, I get them mostly in visions. You know, I could be reading a newspaper, I could be watching a TV show, I could be just discussing a subject, and I'll either get a feeling in my solar plexus, and that's clairsentience.
Yeah, I can see it now.
And I can see it. I can see your feeling now. Or mostly with me through the pineal gland, I guess it is, the third eye, which is really just like a television screen. That's why a lot of readers, if you notice when they're doing readings, have a tendency to look heavenward. It's because the image seems to get picked up on the antenna there. And even Webster's dictionary interprets that as being, they don't know what it's for exactly, but they think it could be the seat of the soul or an antenna for psychic intuition.
Do you have a differential on which is, I would say, more stronger as far as a vision of something, a precursor to something imminent, like, okay, this felt like the 9/11 one, you know, I felt like something bad was going to happen. Is it like that to you as well, where you have these visions, but then you have those visions?
I'm not quite clear on. Are you asking me if some visions are stronger than others?
Yeah, the intensity to separate the impending doom and gloom ones.
Well, you know, it's unfortunately a lot of some people are clairaudio. They hear voices. My granny, who missed the Titanic by 4 hours, she used to hear vision or hear voices and hear, because the universe, as I say, records everything. Even people who've passed on and all kinds of things and things yet to happen. It's all one great continuum. And she would hear things that were going to happen. I see things, but there's no audio to go with it, unfortunately. It's like trying to fine-tune a television set. So, for instance, with the 9/11, I saw for the longest time the Empire State Building standing there by itself. I didn't give any thought to the fact, till after, in retrospect, that I didn't notice the Twin Towers standing there anymore. And then I saw these planes circling, and I saw what I thought they were diving down toward the Empire State Building. And then I saw the Pentagon, and I saw fires, and I saw fires around the White House. And then I made the prediction that New York will be attacked by Arabs, whose symbol is the crescent moon and the star, and wore turban-like apparel on their head. I had flashes. I had in my press kit on my website there. When you click on the home page, it says click here for more. There's letters from all kinds of other people. I was in a studio recording something. Actually, I was recording my year-end predictions for that year in Vancouver, and they four of the people on staff took this information down and wrote letters to this effect, which are on my website there. And then the Toronto Star interviewed me for the coming year, and I said, whatever is going to happen in New York, I said, it will completely disrupt the world. I said, our sense of security will be disrupted. So we'll all have to come together collectively if we're to survive. And there was there was just one thing after another. I thought it was the Empire State Building, but in fact, it was the Twin Towers. Now, another problem with psychics, and I'm just as guilty as anyone else, I did see buildings, two of them tumbling, and I referred to them as the great buildings made of glass shall cascade into the abyss of the ground of the earth. And I wasn't sure where it was, which city, or whether it was New York or London, and I put in brackets New York or London.
Yeah, and that it did. That echoed throughout the world. Here. Also, you predicted other stuff as far as I was going to say the threshing room floor, as in the book of Job. I always get a laugh out of that. You know, you've heard the expression, the patience of Job? Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, Job didn't have any patience at all. All he did was whine and cry all through the whole book. What kind of patience? Why did you do this? You know. Anyway, when Pope John Paul I was inaugurated, and he was on the balcony making his inaugural speech, and I was with all the newsmen there, and we were all watching the monitor up there, and and I said, this Pope he's not going to last long. I said he's going to be killed or murdered. I said it'll be 6 months, no more than 6 months. Of course, everybody laughed at me. And then I even changed mine. I said, no. I said it's going to be even less than that. I said I'll give this Pope 2 months, and you're going to be astounded, and it will be murder. Well, of course, 34 days later, the undreamed of happened. Of course, he was found dead 34 days later in bed and so on after drinking a cup of cocoa. Everybody was astounded, and he said, well, how did you know such, I said, well, I'll tell you. I said, even if I hadn't had a psychic flash about it, I said, first of all, listen to what he says during his inaugural speech. What's the first thing he said? I am going to open the Vatican bank books to see where all the billions of dollars have gone missing.
Oh, well, see that right there? That just,
guess what?
that just killed him.
Then the banker for the Vatican was found in London, hanging beneath, if not London Bridge, one of the bridges in London, with his hands tied behind his back, about 100 pounds of rock stuffed into his pockets, and, hanging from the bottom of the bridge, and, probably 3 bullets in the back of his head, which we call suicide Italian style.
Anthony,
and he was from Toronto here.
Anthony, I got to ask you this. Remember in the intro I talked about if we can see in the future. Mm-hmm. Can we alter destiny? That's like the big conundrum here.
I personally don't believe we can.
Because you talked about how energy's imprinted as far as the past. So do you think the future is also imprinted? I've always been very frustrated, although I can explain the past easily enough. It's difficult to explain future occurrences. I mean, when something, for instance, Hitler starting World War II, Kristallnacht, the night of the broken glass in 1938, Caesar crossing the Rubicon. Now, I believe, as I explained to you about the computer of the brain, of the mind, how we retain all of these images. Uh-huh.
If you saw Hitler, speech in Die Stein and Caesar crossing the Rubicon, your eyes would register that into your electrical psyche. And let me explain that electrical psyche, that electrical spark, is not only attached to you, it's attached to the cosmos. So you've heard the expression, as it is above, so it is below?
Oh, yeah.
All part and parcel. So if we were present, we would have that image recorded in our psyches for all time. But the universe also records it at the same time. So if you had a camera, sensitive enough, you could fine tune it. You could actually pick up those images floating out there in the ether, even now as we speak.
So you're saying that even as like a regular person, you doing a reading, let's just say, I mean, I'm going to differentiate that from, let's just say, like a tragic, like a huge event like the 9/11. You're doing a reading, and, you tell somebody their future. They really cannot, I mean, it's a guide, right? So they can move to a different direction, whatnot.
Well, I'll give you an example of where I work out there, Variety Village. I jog there, and it's a lot of handicapped people. It was built for handicapped children and people, with wheelchairs and all that. And I was jogging around, and then somebody had warned me, one of my old lady friends who's a teacup reader, and she says, be careful where you exercise that you're not hurt or struck by something with wheels. And so, I was jogging along and so on and so forth. And they have what they call those Paralympic wheelchair racers. And one of them come whipping around, and he lost control, and he headed right toward me, right? I jumped out of the lane, and I jumped into the other lane, and guess what? The guy who was racing, which I didn't see, was in that second lane, and he just plowed into me full tilt. So I believe no matter which way you move, you just, as my old granny who missed the Titanic, as they say, by 4 hours, she said, the quicker you try to escape your destiny, the faster you run into it.
Anthony, we are up at 10 minutes left of the show, and I want to get into your most famous list that you do of predictions for the year. Everybody's waiting for this, and go over a few, because it is captivating to everybody out there
to
find
out a few. As you know, I have a whole book here.
So people are out there are ready to get food stamps if they have to.
I wrote these last June. So.
All right, let's go over some of the world events. There's one here where the world is stunned by an unexpected candidate for presidency of the United States who will make former British Prime Minister Iron Lady Margaret Thatcher look like a panty waist. I believe Hillary Clinton to be the next U.S. president or vice president.
Well, I had mentioned her in prior to her running. In fact, when she was when President Clinton was still president, I had made a prediction that she would be president or vice president way back when I guess nobody had thought about it or thought it, because I always go for the long shots. And I really, really thought she had a shot there when she was running, was it neck and neck there with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And after that failed, I mentioned in one of my that she would have a stroke or some problem with her head or her brain. Didn't she have some problems recently?
Well, she had surgery. I remember something like that.
Well, some kind of reported health thing.
Yeah.
But I think it was just a cover because of her mess up with that whole overseas thing.
The Benghazi?
Yeah.
Was it something to do with her head or brain? Do you know?
It must have been with
Anything,
her brain.
I think it's her brain.
Well, anyway,
I don't know about these Democrats nowadays.
Right?
Well, again, it's interpreting the... But you know what? I still think she has a shot. And I'm sticking my neck out. Look, don't forget, my slogan is the world's most documented psychic.
Yeah.
In brackets and small prints, is not necessarily the most accurate all the time.
All right, you have another one that says Osama bin Laden's opposite equal reveals himself. A guy with a blue turban who's a madman.
I, before Obama rose to power, I had something in one of my other books there, which you can check the newspaper archives for it, that the Antichrist would rise from the dark continent and be thrice removed, once, thrice, 3 times removed to the U.S. and cause all kinds of trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So when he came into power, and I like him, I like the way he talks and so on, although from what I've seen, he doesn't seem to be tough enough for what I think America needs at the moment. But anyway, he was born somewhere, or his father was somewhere in Africa, and then he moved somewhere else, then he moved to the States. Is that not right?
Yeah.
Yet, when he is finished, he will have accomplished absolutely nothing, even as a peacekeeper. I'm very glad that he put this Medicare thing, Obamacare, into place, and I hope, because America really needs some form of socialized medicine, because, what do the poor people do? But I really believe that there's going to be someone coming up wearing wears the blue turban, who's just an absolute madman, and he's going to trigger the next foray into this World War III or Armageddon, as we're talking about.
Okay, you have.
I can see the head, but I can't see the. I can see the turban-like, and I don't mean that he's a Sikh, but some kind of headgear that he wears.
All right, you have another one that Southern California, Hollywood, and Santa Monica are due for a haymaker earthquake early in the year. Are we talking about a little one? We're talking about rock and roll here.
Predicting earthquakes, and I usually stay away from that. And and I'm down there visiting Jacqueline Stallone all the time, or at least I have been. In fact, I was supposed to call her to go on to the show to be on the show tonight. I mean, Jacqueline Stallone is probably one of the premier astrologers in the world. I mean, she's a little eccentric and off the wall slightly, but that's because she has money. If you have money, you're eccentric. If you're poor, you're crazy.
All right.
People call me crazy. However, that earthquake I talked about was in my book last year, and I said a great chasm will open up. People will sink into the chasm. They'll be clawing at the sides in an effort to save their life and so on. Well, here's another thing I should tell you. As I say, the universe is quite capable of recording real life and real life, if you know what I mean. R-E-A-L, R-E-E-L. This movie came out, and I can't tell you how many times I've done this, even with Richard Burton when he's shooting Circle of Two. In my mind's eye, I picked up the fact that he'd be crashing onto rocks with a gorgeous young redhead, and he looked up at his manager, and he was a black man, an Aries that I remember, and he said, "Did he read the script?" And he said, No. And at the end of the script called for that scene where he would rush into the rocks with his boat and get killed along with this young girl. And because of that, they changed the end of the movie. Now, that movie that came out a few months ago called, what was it, The End, with all those comedians, Rogan and all.
Oh, what's that? Yeah.
Exactly what happened. The earth opened up. Everybody's clawing at it, exactly as I described in this here prediction. So quite often, and I always more or less add that to the end of some of these predictions, that it may be a scene from a movie.
Anthony, here's another one. This one I need elaboration on. Mother Church shall be no more, roams home, this Pope to flee. Is this the fall of religion?
Well, it's you can't just. I can give you a yes or no answer. The short answer is yes. It is the fall of religion, not just the Mother Church, but all religions. Because if I'm right that God was a star traveler and will return, as it says in Revelation, with his hosts. This is the Lord shall return with his hosts to stop the carnage, lest all flesh perish, all human flesh perish. If that actually happens, and boom, here they are, like the War of the Worlds, suddenly all nations and all eyes will look and see them, and they'll say, oh, this is what we've been worshiping. The Jews call them Yahweh, what the Muslims call them, I'm losing it. What's the Islam for God? I forgot.
Yahweh.
Allah?
Allah. What am I thinking? We call him God, Lord, what else? Whatever the name, it will all disappear because these beings have visited the earth, I'm sure, eons and eons ago, and they probably took the lower primates, the monkeys, the gorillas, the chimpanzees, the orangutans, and they created out of them the human race, did some fancy DNA engineering, and we're the result of it. And somewhere along the line, they also had sex with us and perpetuated their DNA as well, because it says in Genesis, the sons of God saw that the women, the daughters of man, were fair and took to them each as wives as they chose.
I believe that.
Well, I don't know what you mean by going to the wife, but I know what I mean by going to the wife.
All right, Anthony, I want to jump because we are getting pressed for time. I want to jump into a little bit celebrity predictions here. Some of them are just fascinating, and I like how you put stuff.
Fascinating rhythm. Da, da, da.
Exactly. Okay, you say John Travolta finally succumbs to the pressures of the Lavender Mafia. What is that?
Well, he just gets himself caught in some kind of compromising position, I mean, physically, literally, and ends up with some horrible, debilitating disease, or gets caught in some kind of a murder, lovers, and that's going to be the end of him for sure. That's if his plane doesn't crash, because he's pretty reckless with the way he flies that jet around. Because I also see a fire and a real emergency aboard aboard that plane he flies all the time.
You also talked about one with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman.
Or as I like to call him, John Revolting.
John Revolting.
Love it.
All right, you wrote one about Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman. And this one's fascinating. You talk about something about marriage for, I guess, just for publicity.
Well, if the rumors persist, if they're true, allegedly, that he's gay, he'll always be kind of tied to Kidman for the fact that they do have a couple of kids, even if they're adopted. He will marry again for the sake of appearances, for the sake of publicity.
That's believable when we're talking about Tom Cruise.
Now, I said years and years ago he was facing coming to a crossroads in his life. And you remember he sued somebody for accusing of being gay and all that?
Yeah.
All that? Well, methinks the lady, in this case the man, does protest too much. Like, a normal guy would have just let it go. It reminds me of Oscar Wilde and his lover Boozy, who was the son of the guy who created the boxing rules, Marquis of Queensberry, right? He said just let it lie and did nothing about it, and nothing would be said. But there's going to be a lot of publicity surrounding Tom Cruise coming up soon, and that and his religion of Scientology, which is another laugh, because I met L. Ron Hubbard years and years ago, and when we were getting set with Alan Spraggett, who's the author of The Unexplained.
Anthony, we are out of time.
My
already.
God, already!
Yeah. Wait, well, we'll have you back in December for a part 2 because it's getting it's very
flew by.
But give everybody your website and where they can pick up your books.
My website is. What is it? It's Anthony Carr, AnthonyCarrPsychic.com. And if they want printout of all of the events that'll come to pass in the safest places to be in 2014 and beyond. I guess they could order from my website there. There's a young kid that takes care of that stuff for me.
All right.
I don't even have a computer.
All right,
but
Anthony.
I have to say, it's been a pleasure. Time went swiftly, and I hope to meet you. And I have a good friend, Barbara.
Oh, yeah. We're going to get cut off, Anthony. Anthony, we're going to get cut off. Thank you for being on the program. And I'll tell you right now, Anthony's famous last words will be, "I told you so." Enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you right back here on Monday with Cliff Barackman of Finding Bigfoot on the Animal Planet. Everybody stay safe and take care. Good night.
Owned and operated by the renowned brother and sister team of Michael and Lindsay Knight. Seeing is believing. And at NightsParanormalResearchSociety.com, you're going to believe. Join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight for the Paranormal and Beyond. Join host Michael Knight and Lindsay Knight as they investigate the unexplained and most controversial mysteries of the world. The Paranormal and Beyond, where the paranormal lives on and conspiracies exposed. The Paranormal and Beyond, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight. Brought to you by NightsParanormalResearchSociety.com.
Just because you've seen it in the news doesn't mean it's real.
So you're telling me you got physically attacked by a ghost?
Like, I can tell you right now, I believe in the paranormal more than I believe in our government.
There are so many mysteries out there that are still yet to be explained.
You folks have some of your facts wrong.
This just in, you are looking at obviously a very disturbing live shot there. That is the World Trade Center, and we have unconfirmed reports this morning that a plane has crashed into one of the towers of the World Trade Center.
We understand that a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center.
Obviously a major fire there, and there has been some sort of explosion. We don't fully know the details. There is one report, as of yet unconfirmed, that a plane has hit of the World Trade Center.
There's another one. Another plane just hit. Right? Oh, my gosh. Another plane has just hit.
Today, we've had a national tragedy. Two airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country.
There has been a nuclear accident in the Soviet Union, and the Soviets have admitted that it happened. The Soviet version is this. One of the atomic reactors at the Chernobyl atomic power plant near the city of Kiev was damaged, and there is speculation in Moscow that people were injured and may have died.
You are watching, this is video that just came into us, so this is unedited video. You can see people coming across the finish line there, and there is the explosion 1 and 2, but again, the explosion, the main one there at the Marathon Sports.
Telling you this morning there has been a shooting at a school in Newtown. This is the Sandy Hook Elementary School.
And liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
Roger, Challenger. Good roll program confirmed. Challenger now heading downrange.
What appears to be a major catastrophe in America's space program. Challenger, only seconds after leaving the launch pad, has exploded in midair. No word yet on if there are any survivors.
Broadcasting live from the dark and cold dungeons deep beneath the KLAV studios in Las Vegas, Nevada. Prepare yourselves to be taken away into another dimension as we now have
own destinies disregarding the warning signs altogether. In a moment, a man who is known around the world as the most documented psychic and who also predicted events such as the 9/11 attacks, the modern-day Nostradamus himself, Anthony Carr, will be joining us on the program to discuss his remarkable abilities as well as share his juicy 2014 list of world predictions to come. So prepare as we look deep into the future with Anthony Carr when we return right here on the Talk of Las Vegas, KLAV 1230 AM.
You're ticket to the unknown is at knightsparanormalresearchsociety.com. UFOs, ghosts, aliens, hauntings, mysterious places, and more can be found at knightsparanormalresearchsociety.com. Knights with a K, paranormalresearchsociety.com. Based out of Las Vegas, Nevada, Knights Paranormal Research Society is a control over your thoughts, fears, and perspective of the unexplained world you dare not speak of. With your hosts, Lindsay Knight and Michael Knight. Ladies and gentlemen, we now open the gates to the paranormal and beyond.
Broadcasting live from the KLAV studios in Las Vegas, Nevada, this is the Paranormal and Beyond. Since the beginning of time, the world has been plagued with disasters, whether it's cataclysmic, natural, or man-made. As these tragedies present themselves before our own very eyes, we can only sit back and watch these horrors unfold, secretly wishing that if we knew these disastrous events in advance, we could all possibly prevent them from ever taking place. But just what if we were all able to take a sneak peek into the future? Can we really alter the course of our